I almost failed out of college. 2 all-nighters back to back, which was a disaster. And the only reason I left was because my wife was giving birth to my son. You're gonna learn how to help me buy a house faster than I'm gonna learn English. You know, I did something wrong again. I didn't even know I failed a personality test. I felt like I didn't fit in. Everybody there was from Harvard or Yale, except for me. And I just felt like, what am I doing here? I remember getting a letter from Brooklyn College saying that if I can't maintain a 2.0 average, I wouldn't be able to continue.
Welcome to season 2 of Momentum. Momentum has been around for a little while now, and I'm so proud to have seen it grow over the past 12 months. Before we start, guys, be sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our weekly episodes. My guest today is Jack Aini, a guy whose name comes up in every corner of the community, whether it's in law, leadership, or just getting things done. Jack is the founder of Aini Associates, a thriving real estate law firm. He's the former president of SBH and the current president of his shul SLC. And what I love about Jack through this conversation is the way that all of those roles connect. We talked about how a single phone call from a family friend who only spoke Arabic and needed help buying a house completely changed the trajectory of Jack's life. I mean, that one moment turned into a law firm, a community career, and years of lasting impact. Jack also opened up about how his childhood shaped him. He tells us why he always felt like he didn't fit in and how he turned that feeling into fuel for helping others. I'm Victor Braca, and Momentum is where I dive deep into the stories behind business success. Enjoy. This episode is sponsored by the Sephardic Mikveh of Gravesend. Jack Aini, welcome to Momentum.
Thank you. Great to be here.
It's great to have you over here. You founded a global law firm, very successful law firm, and at the same time, you're president of SBH. You're very involved in your shul, and you do so much charity work in and outside of the community. So I want to start off by just asking a question that encapsulates who you are. How do you explain what you do in the sense of work?
I'm an attorney. I'm also a businessman. I really just try to do my best in any capacity that I'm in. So if somebody needs legal help, I'll try to advise them as best I can with the knowledge that I have and experience that I have to that end. But more often than not, people are coming to me for life help, for help with their business, help with their family, help with anything else. And that's great. I usually take those calls before my legal calls.
That's great. I mean, it shows what's really important to you. And I love how you pointed out that you're an attorney and you're a businessman. You could see that you have a law degree and you have an MBA, right? And so,
yes.
I wanna get into how those meld in terms of business and in terms of helping people with their companies and their businesses and kickstarting their careers.
I didn't grow up thinking that I wanted to be an attorney. That
Really?
was never a thing. No, I grew up thinking I wanted to be a businessman. My father was in retail. I was going to be in retail. That was the life that was planned out for me. He got me a store at for the graduation gift of high school. I think he was somewhat disappointed at the time that I wanted to go to college. Maybe it was because I was going to college because my friends were going to college.
Right.
We came to a good understanding with each other that I would go to college, but it would be Brooklyn College because it was blocks away from Church Avenue, which is where the store was.
Sure.
And I would basically do double duty. I'd go to school when I had to, and I'd go to work when I could, and I would make them both work. And that was the beginning of my juggling career, which lasts until today.
And you were only 18 years old at that point. You're in school full time. You're working full time. What did you study?
Business. I had a business management and finance degree. I think it was called Bachelor of Science in Business. Everything I took was related to business. There was only one class that was called business law. That was it. Yeah, I was going to be a businessman.
Right. And were you always studious in school? Did you do well? I mean, coming from an immigrant background.
I was a disaster.
Really?
I was always capable. My report cards always said, very capable, but just not performing well enough.
Right.
I think I was kind of scared to perform well. I was scared that if I gave something my all, then and I didn't succeed, then that was kind of who I was. I was just the guy who tried and couldn't do it. So I'd rather not try And if I didn't succeed, it's because I know internally I didn't really try my best. So I didn't fail at that point. I just didn't try hard enough. I think that was a theme growing up. Like I was okay just kind of going with the flow and not doing my best.
And at what point in your life did you say you shed that mindset?
I don't know if there's a particular time, but I definitely know that it happened.
Right. Over time, slowly.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like when you got to college, were you applying yourself?
No, I almost failed out of college. Because I was working in the stores during the days, I didn't take school seriously at all. I remember getting a letter from Brooklyn College saying that if I can't maintain a 2.0 average, that I wouldn't be able to continue.
Oh, wow. 2.0.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I was missing finals. I mean, if the finals happened in December when we were busy at retail, I would just completely skip them.
Right.
My friends in college had already dropped out after the first year.
And they all went to business.
They all went into their own businesses, and they were succeeding, and they were starting to see money, where I was still, writing reports.
Right.
It wasn't a great scenario for me. I don't really know why I stayed. I think I really didn't love the retail. It helped that it was the early 90s and retail wasn't that great, especially in the business that I was in, which was really all types of variety and housewares. That was on the downhill. So it helped that I didn't really have a great fallback. If you'd asked me in the 80s, the late 80s, when I was in high school, that retail was unbelievable. So there was no reason to go get a different type of education. But in the early 90s, you could kind of see the writing on the wall. And I stayed in college because I felt like I needed something different or just because it happened to me. But that's what happened.
Right. And so you stayed in college. And did you go straight to law school?
I did. I went straight to law school.
So when did you decide that you wanted to go to law school? And when did you turn your average around from 2.0 to whatever was able to get you into law school?
So one day in the cafeteria, we were waiting to go for lunch, and we were a couple of friends, and there was a girl who was supposed to come to lunch with us, but she was busy practicing her LSATs.
Sure.
She was going to take the LSAT to go to law school. And I remember sitting there and we're waiting for her and we're like, come on, we gotta go. And she's like, I can't get this problem. And the LSAT, one of the sections, or two of the sections at the time, were analytics. So it was really just games. It's these games where you have to figure out, like, okay, 5 people have to sit around a table, one guy can't sit next to this guy, this one has to sit on the right, whatever it is. Analytical games. And I used to do these whenever I used to go on vacation. I used to buy a book at the airport with these types of games. This was fun for me.
Right.
And I was like, this is the LSAT? Like, are you kidding me? So I look at it and I'm like, well, this is how you do it. And I kind of did it quickly just so that we can go out to lunch. And she was amazed. She was like, wow, you could do this? Like, you should totally take the LSAT. And I was like, that's funny. Because, anybody who knows me knows I'm not the lawyer. I'm the business guy. I'm the guy who's, but as soon as she said it, my friends were like, wow, you could do this one. And it was like, if this is what law is, playing games all day, I mean, I'll do that. I'll try it. And one thing led to another. I ended up signing up for a Princeton review course to take the LSAT the next time around. And then things started falling into place. I did well on it. And I ended up getting scholarships to different law schools. And I remember thinking to myself, like, is this really, like, I'm going to be professional? It was never in the cards for me. I remember telling my parents, and they're like, what? Like, you're going to be a lawyer? You're going to go to law school? And I remember so nervous to tell my father that I was considering doing this now that I actually got into law school. Because what's going to happen to the stores? And that was his question, like, and what's going to happen with the stores? I was helping him. And he built a beautiful business with it, and he was really building it for his kids. And I was like, I'll do both, And he was fine with that, and I was fine with that, and I actually did. Throughout the first year of law school, I was still going back and forth to the stores.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a lot of work.
It was.
Like, at what point, maybe during your undergrad, maybe during law school, did you get your act together and turn your GPA from a 2.0 into a non-2.0?
So actually, it was junior year that I that I applied to law school, that I took the LSAT, and I saw that I did well, and I said, this could be a new me. I can definitely give it a little bit more. And then I really did give it a lot more, and I actually graduated with an okay average from Brooklyn College. I think it was even one of the cum laudes or something. So
Oh, wow.
I did pick it up from sophomore year. You know, it is in sophomore
It's a big turnaround.
year. It's a big turnaround. Freshman year, I really wasn't there, but then sophomore year, I think I had some friends, and partly to impress some of the people around me at the time. Tried to do a little bit better on the classes. Just really try to come to class, I should say.
That's step one.
And then, I graduated okay. I ended up in law school, and I did well in law school. I did very well.
What does it look like for you now? You're in law school, and take me into when you were graduating law school. I mean, you're an entrepreneur, and you're all of a sudden becoming a professional. And so I'm assuming you didn't go into business right after graduating law school?
I was still finding myself. I was still trying to develop myself and figure out who I am. It didn't occur to me yet that I'm going to be a lawyer.
Right.
I was just going through the skills. I remember one of my friends and one of my friends from way back tells me, "What are you going to do? Put the diploma behind your register? Like, what are you doing with law school? What are you going to do with it? You
Right.
have stores." And I was still that guy. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that I took the test. I got into law school. I went to law school. I was doing well in law school. What was going to be from that? I don't know. I mean, it was a little bit discouraging. We'd go out. I'd have events with the professors from time to time. We'd go out. We'd talk, and you'd realize like their lives sometimes were a little bit shallow. They were just living paycheck to paycheck, going to school, teaching, going back to. It wasn't our community life. It wasn't, a lot of things going on with families. So I wasn't sure that I wanted that life.
The academic life.
The academic life, or if that was the epitome of success in law, where you're able to teach it at the time. You think your professors are like law school professors are huge. I wasn't sure that was the field that I wanted to be in still. I was getting a skill. We're going to figure out how to use that skill at a later time.
Sure. But
for now, I'm getting a skill. And you know what? If that skill leads me to have stores where I could review my own leases, great. I didn't know what I wanted to do yet.
Interesting. But like, you're in law school, it's 3 years of your life, and you're a young guy, so it's like pivotal years. It's like really fundamental. It's a fundamental time for you. You were just in law school, like without a clear plan. You were just saying, like whatever I get from this, I'll get from this. Or did you have in the back of your mind, not a backup plan, but an idea of where you wanted to go? Like, did you know you wanted to go into big law? Did you want to go into family law, into tax law, into anything like that?
Had no idea.
No idea.
No clear plan, but I had a strategy. My strategy was to build myself up with skills as much as I can along the way. So I didn't miss an opportunity to get a skill.
Right.
So if there was a program somewhere that would teach me something, I would go do it. My whole life is like, anytime I see an opportunity for something to improve myself, I take it.
I love it. And it sounds like you don't need to push yourself too much to motivate yourself. Or it doesn't require discipline, but you're a guy who wants to learn, who wants to grow your skills.
Yeah, I don't like to know that there's something out there that I can't do. I want to try it. I may not be the best at everything, and that's normal. And I may not be good at many things, and that's also normal. But it's not going to be because I didn't try or explore it.
Right. In law school, law firms recruit the students for, whether it be big law firms or boutique law firms. So where did you go when you graduated?
To a firm called Cadwalader, Wickersham, and Taft.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It's a mouthful. Oldest firm in New York, white shoe, one of the largest firms.
Nice.
Then and now.
Nice. So you got into the world of big law.
Yes.
That's that's like the opposite of the stores.
So opposite.
So tell me about that.
First, when I got in, the school was very excited because I went to Cardozo Law, and it was a relatively new school, and they didn't have many people at big law at the time. So it was a big deal for the school. In fact, I remember going to the dean after I got in. I wanted to do a joint JD MBA degree because they had a program with Baruch to do that. And And the dean was like, I'm not going to approve it. It's like, why not? It's an extra, you get 1 extra year, you spend 1 extra year in doing this joint program. And with that 1 year, you get both degrees. So instead of spending 3 years for law and 2 years for an MBA, you do it in 4. It's like, why wouldn't you do that? I really want to do it. And that's what I want, that joint degree. Why I wanted that joint degree is totally another story. I just wanted to have another skill under my, another skill that I could put on my resume, under my belt, to kind of know that's really the field I want to go in. But regardless, he was like, no, I'm not going to prove it. I said, why not? He said, because if I can get a guy into Cadwalader, in this year, why would I wait another year? And that was it. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm not getting my joint degree.
But they were really excited about you getting into this firm.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
And what does your first day at this firm look like? I mean, like we said, opposite of the stores, totally different environment, corporate, huge company, hundreds of people. Tell me about it.
So I felt like I didn't fit in. Everybody there was from Harvard or Yale, except for me. And I just felt like, what am I doing here? Like, it's so weird. It was, again, very white shoe. I ended up going there. I felt out of place for a while. And then I I'll tell you, I did my best of it. I really worked hard. I worked ridiculous through the nights. I mean, there were many nights that I didn't come home. I remember, there was one time that I worked 2 nights in a row.
Oh, wow. 2 all-nighters?
2 all-nighters back to back, which was a disaster. And then the following day, the only reason I left was because my wife was giving birth to my son. And so it was bad. I remember, I'll tell you the story. You don't have to tape all of it. I'll tell you the story. I was there all night. It was Monday I went into the office. Monday night, I had to work an all-nighter, no problem. Tuesday, I'm supposed to go home. So by the time I was able to get there, it was like about 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. And I'm like, I'm done. I had my coracha in my hand already because I had it driven over. I sent the car to my house to bring my coracha so I could pray in the office. I was done. And we had Cadwalader had its firm was located at 100 Maiden Lane, which was at the time 3 buildings connected by an atrium. It was a beautiful, beautiful building, but the lobby was like huge and gorgeous. And we had our own dispatch service, car dispatch service. There was no Uber at the time. So we had our own dispatch service in the lobby. You go there, you give them your name, where you're going, and they get you a car right away. When you go there at night, so after like 8, 9 o'clock, the lobby is full with people who are waiting for their cars, and you have to go in order. But if you stayed the night before, then there was an unwritten rule that you just go right to the front of the line and you say, I need to go now. So I did that. I went. I said, I need to go now. Great. They got me a car. I get into the car. I'm talking to the driver as to where I want to go.
Sure.
And I get on the door. And I look and I see it's the partner, the managing partner of the firm.
That can't be good.
And he was my direct supervisor at the time because everybody between us had left. And he's like, hey, where are you going? I'm like, I'm going home. He's like, we have something that really needs to get done. And I was like, I'm here since Monday, since yesterday morning. He's like, we have something that really needs to get done. And I was like, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I could totally just say no, but I was like, no, I'm going to do this, And I said, all right. I got out of the car and I walked right back with him. Like, I felt like I was being punished as I walked through the lobby. And now everybody in the lobby that was waiting for their cars and saw me go to the front of the line knew that I was there from the day before. And now they see me being pulled back in. And they were like just staring and they couldn't believe it. And oh my God, the comments that I got the next day from everybody was like, what the hell happened last night? How did you agree to that? Why didn't you do something? You have to go complain. You have to do something. You have to say something.
This is like Tuesday at like 10 at night and you've been there since Monday, 8 in the morning pretty much?
Yeah, something like that.
Wow.
So I actually stayed the other night and then, and then my wife gave birth the next morning. I had to go.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, I think stories like that really show the grind that's required to a couple decades later, just step back and look at your life and be satisfied and with your success. Did you know that there's no women's mikveh in Gravesend? On Friday nights and Yom Tov, walking to the nearest one on Avenue S can be a real challenge, especially late at night or in tough weather. That's why we're building the Sephardic Mikveh of Gravesend, a beautiful, halachically approved women's mikveh right off of Avenue X and Ocean Parkway. Designed with elegance, dignity, and complete privacy for the women who uphold Tahara in our households. But we can't do it without you. This is a community project, and every donation helps bring it closer to reality. Guys, to partner with us or learn more, visit raisethon.com/Gravesend. That's RAISETHON.com/GRAVESEND, or click the link in the show notes, guys. The Sephardic Mikveh of Gravesend is close, dignified, built by the community for the community. Let's get back to the episode. So you're working at this big law firm for how long?
I was there for 2 years and 1 minute.
2 years and 1 minute, right? Yeah.
2 years was the standard thing. So if you worked there for 2 years, then you could leave. If you leave before 2 years, it's like you couldn't make it.
Right.
And it doesn't look good on your resume. So you have to stay for at least 2 years. I really felt like I never fit. I'll tell you, we had a summer internship. I had the summer internship at the firm. And I remember they brought somebody in to run personality tests, a Myers-Briggs personality test. And she did this whole thing, and you kind of fill out a whole questionnaire, and then they tell you where you fit in. And as we take the test, she takes it, she does the results, and she explains it on the board, and she does this kind of graph and shows, well, not surprisingly, almost all of you fall into this category, which is whatever it is, I forget the letters, but you all fall into this, and she shows like a splattergram showing all the dots of where everybody is, and here you all are, and you all fit into it.
Rigid, probably.
Rigid, all into like one segment of the...
Not creative and just...
Yes, right. And then she says, and one of you fell on the opposite corner all the way down here. And it's so strange because I really, in all my years, I've never seen anybody in big law really so far deep into this corner. And she goes, but that just shows what a great place, everything works. And we're all there. She's like, Jack, can I talk to you for a second? I'm like, I knew it. I knew it. I did something wrong again. I didn't even know I failed a personality test. And it was a good conversation. Her name was Eva Wisnik, still is Eva Wisnik. And she had told me that, look, there's no wrong personality. It's just that you may feel like you won't fit in here. I'm like, oh, I could have told you that. She's like,
the data shows that.
She's like, you're an INFP. I forgot what all those things stand for, but whatever it is, it's not what the typical lawyer is. You're more creative, more feeling oriented, whatever they are. And I was like, okay, what does it mean for me? And she said, it means that you may feel like you're out of place. You may feel misunderstood. You may not be communicating the right way. You might not be understanding the communications the right way. Like people work differently within their own, with their own kind, I'll say. And I said, okay. And that was it. So I'm an INFP and I have to deal with it. But it was fine for me because that creative side and that emotional side, I think that did me very well in my career path.
For sure. And I could say, looking back at your peers at that big law firm, you're probably one of the only ones who went on to start his own company and took the entrepreneurial path. I could say that most people in the world don't do that, right? I think it's funny to point out that you didn't feel like you fit in at that big law firm when you were just out of law school, and and you're so thankful for that. That's the way your personality is today. Looking back, so. You were at this law firm for 2 years, and where did you go after that? You didn't start your company right after that, correct?
No, I did not. So I got a call, fittingly, at 3 a.m. from one of my clients, and this was when websites were showing my age. This is when people were starting to get comfortable with websites. It was a new concept, and the call was from my client at the time was Norwest Bank. Later to become Wells Fargo. And my client called me. He was in the office at 3 a.m, and I was in the office at 3 a.m. And he's like, Jack, we're trying to develop something where instead of calling a fax number calling a number to have a report faxed to you as an investor. We want to have it on a website where people can go and get it themselves. And I was like, wow, that's huge. It's a huge concept.
So hard to believe. But
yeah. So we were talking about it, and I said, this is something that can be done. We just have to develop how it's going to work. Like, what do the pages look like? When they go to a landing page on a website, what do they see? So we started developing that and started working through it. And he tells me, Jack, truth is, and the bank was just starting in this business and really had only done like a deal or two at the time. And I represented them on both those deals while I was at Cadwalader. And they said, we're looking for somebody to come help us run our business and grow our business. Would you know anybody that, that might want to come over to us? And I'm thinking, like, who would I suggest? I'm second year at Cadwalader, but there's
still
people,
a junior?
Still
a junior?
No, second year in Cadwalader.
Right, no, meaning like, is that a junior associate? Like, what's
Oh,
your
yeah,
title?
very junior. Yeah, as junior as can be. So I'm thinking, like, who would it be? The guy above me who, So I started recommending names. And he's like, would you think about this guy, Eric or Igor, who would you think about, And he's like, no, I was thinking somebody like, a little different, who's been doing our deals, maybe is comfortable, understands about our website a little bit. I'm thinking, like, he's describing me. I'm like, are you asking me to come over? Like, what are you talking about? I hardly know what I'm doing here. And he's like, Jack, I can't ask you, but if you were to ask me, I would be very interested if you'd come over. And I said, yeah, I'd be interested in coming over. I think, I'd love to hear about it. So we went for meetings, and that was it. That's how one thing led to another. And I ended up at what would become Wells Fargo.
Nice. And what was your position there? I mean, you went from the law world into the banking world.
Yes. So I was on the business side, not on the legal side of things.
Interesting.
I was they had so many different titles for me over there. But I was like I think it was a business development manager, head of business development. I was a VP. I was the guy in charge of CMBS in the corporate trust world.
What's CMBS?
Commercial mortgage-backed securities.
Got it.
It's pool mortgage loans together, commercial loans. You strip them into securities, sell them out. We were on the service side of that business.
Nice. And totally different than...
Very different than Cadwalader. Although I was working with the same people, so Cadwalader was our
law provider.
Our attorney.
Right. So you mentioned in passing how your boss told you that you had to choose between being an Orthodox Jew and being in big law in that world. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And we'll take a break from the business end of things for a second, and just being an religious Orthodox Jew in big law or in big finance or in medicine or whatever it might be. I mean, so many people are faced with those challenges of having to leave at 4 p.m. on a winter Friday or having to take off on a random Wednesday and Thursday for the holidays. Like, how did you navigate that? And I'm sure people at your firm are looking at you like, what is this guy doing? And he's pulling the religious card on us. What does that really mean? Like, how did you go about that when all your colleagues are working literally 24/7?
That was, it was definitely an experience. I remember it like yesterday. I was going out. It was Passover, and we had the first 2 days of holiday. It was one of those years where the first 2 days are on like a Tuesday, Wednesday,
right,
and then the last 2 days are the same. And it's like, whoa, And I remember I'm about to leave the office for the second part of the holiday, and he sees me passing. He's always like, Jack, where are you going? And I'm like, it's holiday, I gotta go. He's like, what do you mean you have to go? Where are you going? We have a lot of work to do. And I said, well, it's holiday. I can't. I have to go home. He's like, what do you mean you can't? He says, please come in. I go into his office, and he says, I need to understand this. What do you mean you can't come in tomorrow? So I said, I can't. I'm not allowed to do it. He goes, what do you mean? He goes, does somebody physically tie you down to a chair and so you can't move and get up? Or are you choosing not to get up and come to the office? I'm like, nobody ties me to anything. I said, when I'm an Orthodox Jew, and that decision precludes me from coming in to work on holiday. So he says, well, he does this thing. Do you mind? He does this thing. He goes, I don't understand. He goes, I could stand here, or I could stand here. He goes, I have the power to choose what I do. He goes, are you saying you don't have the power to actually get up and come to work tomorrow? So I said, I made a decision years ago to become an Orthodox Jew, and that precludes me from making a decision to get up and come to the office tomorrow. So he says to me, he says, well, you should have known that decision that you made so many years ago precluded you from making a decision to come service your clients 24/7 right here.
That's ridiculous.
So I was like, this is a very good point that you're making, and unfortunately I have to run because I'm late for my holiday, but put it into an email. Emails were somewhat new at the time. So put it into an email and copy HR so that I can read it when I come back from holiday. I just walked out. And I remember coming back on Thursday or whatever it was, and he comes into my office and he says, listen, I just want you to know that, while you're away, I spoke to your clients and, I understood you spoke to them before, you told them about your schedule and everything was in order, and the truth is you did have everything in order while you were away, so I appreciate that. And he left. And that was it. And I remember I told people of the story, and one of my good friends at Cadwalader.
Also Orthodox Jew?
Also Orthodox Jew. He's like, you have to go to HR and tell them. You have to tell them what happened. I said, no, I'm not gonna go tell them. I don't need any headaches with anybody. I'm fine. And anyway, he came back and he apologized. He's like, that was not an apology.
Right.
That was not an apology. He just said that you had your work in order. So what? There's no apology there. I said, I'm not going to make a stink out of anything. I'm fine.
Right.
I'm not hurt. I did whatever I wanted to do, and I'm fine. My advice to kids, to answer your question, my advice to kids, that was a hard position to take, and I could see how many people, and that's what his point was that people could fall into that. People who are worried about losing their job, their livelihood, because of a decision like that, they might flip and say, you know what, if I have to come to work, I'm anus, I have to do it. The reality is there's no such thing. Life is much bigger than those little things, and you have to be true to who you are. And your opportunities will come to you that way. I think the fact that I was able to stand up for myself and for what I knew was right, even though I wasn't sure what would come out of it, made me stronger as a person, and even more important, stronger in my relationship with him. I think that I developed a respect. I think that if I were to flake out, then I would have lost all respect from him. And I think that didn't happen. I think that he understood that this is who I am.
Right.
I'm going to do my work. I'm not going to, you say, how do other people look at it? Everybody knew the amount of work that I was putting in. They saw it in my work. They saw it in the way that I stayed at nights, the way I covered for them on their holidays. I was not a slacker by any sense of the word, and everybody knew that. So there was no question that I was making up the time. But stay true to yourself and do what's right, and those opportunities will follow suit.
Nice. And so you were at what was soon to become Wells Fargo for how long?
10 years.
Oh, wow. Oh, you were there for a while.
Yeah.
And so, at this point, you're, if we do the quick math, 15 years, what are you, 33?
Probably that's about right.
33-ish. And so you have a family, you have a wife and kids at this point, and you have a steady job.
At Wells.
Right.
Steady job, and I'll say it was great job, great people, great business. The head of my team, everything was going great. And part of the reason I took the job at the time was to have a normal life. I didn't want that crazy life. We were having kids. I wanted to spend time with them. I wanted to grow up with them. I didn't want to have a life where I was working around the clock. I wanted to kind of take it easy and just be a person.
And then you started a business.
It didn't last, not even a day. Even while I was at Cadwalader with my crazy hours, I got a call from somebody, a person from the community that only spoke Arabic. And he says, Jack, I need to buy a house. And I was like, okay, good luck. He's like, no, I spoke to your father in shul, and he said that you're a lawyer, and I need a lawyer. He's telling me this in Arabic. And my Arabic at the time was, iffy at best. I don't know I don't know how he ended up with a house and not like something else. But, I'm like, I don't do houses. I'm a lawyer, but I don't. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't know how to do that. Like, if you're buying $1 billion house, that's what I do. Everything is in the billions. Everything on Wall Street is like, there's no. I remember my father called me once, like, Jack, I need you to work on something for me. I'm like, Papa, everybody's like, he's like, I don't care how many zeros you have after what you're doing, but I'm your father, and this is what you're gonna do. I said, okay. So I was like, unless your house is $1 billion, it's not something that I can handle. It's not something that I know how to do. He tells me, he says, you're gonna learn how to help me buy a house faster than I'm gonna learn English. And I was like, all right, what did my father get me involved in? This shul talk in the morning. Yo, Jack can help you. Yeah.
That's my son.
Yeah. All right, so you got to buy a house. So you got to figure out how to represent somebody buying a house. And called a couple of friends, called around, did some research, and I said, okay, it doesn't seem too difficult. We're going to try this out. And I ended up representing him on the house. And closed, and like a week later, his brother-in-law calls. Mr. Jack, they call him Mr. Jack. Mr. Jack, I need to buy a house. I'm like, oh my God. I was like, you gotta be kidding me, And that became a business, started moonlighting and just doing work on the side. And
what does moonlighting mean?
Moonlighting means you work during the day at a regular job, but then at night, when the moon's out, you have a whole nother life. You're doing a whole nother job.
Right, off hours.
Off hours. And I started my business at that time. I remember getting a fax machine at Cadwalader, my own personal fax machine. And everybody's like, why do you need a personal fax machine? We have a whole fax center. And I'm like, I have my own things, I'm doing my own thing. I need it for myself. I remember later on, my partner would see me at my supervising partner would see me at a golf game that we were hosting actually for a lot of clients and firms. And it was like, so Jack, you still doing moonlighting? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, you still have your own fax machine where you do? I was like, it's not a fax machine anymore. But yeah, I still do legal work on the side. And my supervisor was right there, and he's like, yeah, Jack actually helped me close on my house a few months ago. He was very proud of me. Too well. He wasn't upset with it at all. It was actually great. So that didn't work. But I was moonlighting and doing my own thing, and that would become my law firm business. It started with that house purchase, an opportunity that came my way that I said okay to. And I did it all throughout the time that I was at Wells, and eventually it became huge.
Did you leave Wells at the point where your moonlight business was surpassing your day job?
It was about the same.
Which is
huge. I will say that with all the moonlighting that I did, it never affected my day job.
Right.
My day job was my day job, and I made sure I did everything right there. And over and beyond what was expected. But yet, I left Wells at a time where the market was in a frenzy. It was in 2008, so
right.
The market had taken a dip, and all the financial markets were a mess. And there was a lot of uncertainty. They were letting a lot of people go. I was unhappy with those decisions. They were asking me to let go of people who had worked there for a long time and who were really reliant on the job to support their families. And they were really doing very good quality work. And our business group was actually doing great. It was making a ton of money.
Even during the crisis?
Even during that, yeah, because, our business was just doing great. Although it's affected as far as new deals coming in, there's a portfolio of deals that support the business. So I didn't really agree to that, and I had expressed my frustration a couple of times, and people weren't happy that I wasn't really complying with the reduction. And then I remember saying something to somebody saying, "Listen, if they're going to go reducing everybody, I'd let them take me out. Because you have to be careful in this environment. You don't talk like that." I'm like, well. It's okay, I kind of have my own thing. I'm okay with it. And one thing led to another, and all of a sudden we were in discussions over, if I were going to leave the firm, where would I go? Would I go to another firm and compete with this firm? Like, would I go compete at a different bank? Would I do my own thing? And we came to a good understanding that I would go do my own thing, and the bank would use me as their counsel.
Oh wow!
Which was great for me. It was great for me and great for the bank, and that's what we did.
That's super interesting.
Because the business was down, there wasn't any new deals for a long time, so it took a while till that actually materialized. But it gave me time to figure out, my business and grow it, and that's where we are.
Wow. And so, you start at your business full time, and was there what to do full time? What did your business look like then? Were you still selling or buying the homes for Arabic people? Like, how did it work?
So yeah, it was a lot of real estate, a lot of partnership agreements. It had already developed by that time, so there was a constant flow. I was actually partners with somebody who was also moonlighting at his company. So he worked somewhere and I worked somewhere, and we both moonlighted, and we formed a firm that really just was revolved around our schedules. So yeah, we were busy already. It was a little bit scary as to, okay, what happens now? Now there's no paycheck coming in every.
How many kids did you have?
There was for a while. 4 at the time.
Oh wow!
3 or 4.
You had a whole family.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you nervous?
I was a little nervous. But I was confident that it was going to work out. I was confident, and
Right.
I knew that it would be fine.
Right. And so, you go full time into Aini Associates. Was it called that from the onset?
It wasn't. The first rendition, when we were moonlighting from the 1990s, it was called Aini and Blatt.
Sure.
And I was partners with Jeffrey Dweck and David Blatt. Then later on, it became Aini and Lazar, and the partners were Ronnie Lazar and myself. And then later on, when it took another turn, it was just Aini Associates.
Got it. And that was in 2008, and you already had an established business from then. And so, what did it look like growing your business? Like, you told me about the late nights and the grind that you had to face in Big Law, right? Those 2 all-nighters in a row, or I'm sure that's just scratching the surface. So, what does it look like for you now that you're no longer working just in the evenings and the early mornings, but you're working on your law firm all day? And what does the grind look like? Tell me some stories to illustrate that.
It became worse. I realized that it wasn't Cadwalader that made me work through the night. It was myself. Maybe they created that environment for me, but
Right.
in reality, I remember I was working through the night at Wells Fargo, and they were like, Jack, we don't do that here. Like, why are you working through why are you sending emails at 3 in the morning? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know. That's when I can get things done. I don't like having things on my head. When there's something to do, I like to do it. So I just stay up and do it. Still like that. And by the way, it's great when you think about it, because you have so many more hours in the day to do things.
Right. Yeah. You're taking out of your sleep, but, if it works for you.
You get used to it. I know it's not healthy. I know people say it's not a good way, but you get used to, less sleep. And
How many hours do you sleep per night?
I don't even want to answer
Putting
that.
you on the spot here. I want to know. I'm very curious.
Shabbat? Shabbat's great.
Don't give me that.
On a typical night, 4 or 5 hours.
Wow. Every night. Wow, that's very little. And you're functioning and you're up and you want to do a podcast at 7 in the morning.
Gotta fit everything in.
And I said, we'll do it. Right. Wow. So how'd you grow your business? Like, what exactly is the type of law that you're in?
I don't even know. It's a little bit of everything that comes my way. In general, most of my deals are real estate related, so it's commercial, residential, mostly commercial at this point, but purchasing, selling, refinancing, all of that. but a lot of partnership deals, a lot of licensing deals, a lot of everything that comes my way. Really, I don't see myself as a lawyer with a particular skill.
Sure.
I see myself as an attorney who has a broad range of skills, a broad range of resources at my disposal. And when somebody comes through the door, I try to figure out what they need for help. And sometimes it's not even legal stuff.
Right, right. And your growth at Wells Fargo was capped at a certain point. You know, like the highest that you could become is the CEO, if that, you know, the CEO of the firm or the head of the division.
I mean, that would be pretty big, don't get me wrong.
For sure, for sure. But
I remember having a conversation with the division head. So, you know, everything works in silos and it falls in. This was like the head of the entire division. And we were at a conference somewhere. And he was speaking to me about different opportunities and he wanted me to grow into. He wanted to, you know, I was in the problem with Wells, the situation at Wells was that I was working in New York. Wells wasn't a New York bank. So it had larger offices in Maryland and even larger offices in Minnesota and even larger offices in California. So it was like, you know, I had to, you know, so being in New York in the satellite office, we were only a couple of people there. So my opportunities were limited. And he was telling me that. He said, listen, he goes, you know, he goes, what would you think about, you know, moving? What would you think about going, you know, moving here? Because we have many opportunities, but they're not in New York. He even suggested that I go to, you know, because we were building at that point a European platform. And he said, you know, what do you think about that? And I said, I don't think that's going to work at all. My family's in New York. He's like, well, what about moving to like Maryland or Minneapolis? You know, I was like, it's not going to work either. I'm in New York. You know, this is where I am. I'm not going anywhere. This is my community, my life. He's like, you know, I really don't know what to say then. I think those opportunities are limited while you're in New York for our bank. For other banks, it might be great. And I said, okay, I'm going to keep that in mind. The next time I met with him, I said, I have a question for you. You know, my opportunities are limited here working in this capacity, but, you know, we send so much money out to legal every year, and I used to be the attorney for this group. What if I go off on my own and do that? Would I be able to represent the bank? And he said, look, we wouldn't want any attorney other than you representing us. You know, we're very comfortable with you, but what would that look like? You know, and it was a conversation. Ultimately, I know he really wanted me to just stay and continue growing the business. When I spoke about what about if I were going to do deals internally, like I would handle in-house our deals. He said, well, that would be a conflict of interest. We wouldn't want that. And I remember saying to him, well, how can I make a certain amount of money that would make me comfortable? And I told him, let's say I needed this amount of money a year to live. How would I go about making that sum of money here in this position? And he said, Jack, I don't even make that kind of money. So I was like, all right, well then, you know, right. What do I do from there? You know, so that wasn't it wasn't a path that I thought I could grow enough. So yes, you could become, and I know people that have in our community who have grown really high in the banking world, and I'm sure they do very well. But for me, it didn't look like that was going to happen at the bank that I was at.
Right, right. I love it. I love that mindset, and I'm sure it carries over into your community activities and nonprofits and getting involved in those sort of organizations. So, just to give a quick high level, you were the president of SBH for a good 4 or 5 years, ending just a couple of years ago, and you guided SBH through COVID, which was a very big time period in the world. You're the president of your shul, and like you said, you help people out in business. You're involved in dozens of business ventures in order to get people on their feet, get them moving. I think all this, we spoke about your business life and your career, but I think this really speaks to who you are as a person and what makes Jack Aini, right? And so, why do you choose to get involved?
I don't live on an island. I live with people. Religiously, I believe everything is from Hashem, and He gives it to the people that are going to help those around them to continue, to Like, I don't believe that everything I get is really for me. I believe it's for sharing. And, I don't know. Everybody has certain skills, certain resources, certain knowledge. And I think that we do better as a team when we share all that. I just see it as part of my, not an ethical responsibility, but it's part of the very fiber of who we are, is that we share.
Right. I love it. Kosher Media is the prominent advertising network for the Jewish community. They reach millions of people in thousands of Jewish communities worldwide through text, email, and social blasts. David and his team have been helping me grow my reach with Momentum for so many months now, and I've seen the effects firsthand. I mean, our views have skyrocketed since starting to work with Kosher Media. Be sure to check them out at koshermedia.com. Again, that's Kosher Media, the premier advertising network of the Jewish community. And tell me a little, I mean, I know I gave the high level, but tell me in your words a little bit about what you're involved in.
So yes, you mentioned SBH. I was involved in SBH for many years. Loved it. Best years of my life so far. An amazing organization, an amazing team. I remember my first foray into it. I was new. I became a captain. Getting into a room to try to help and not try to solve, but try to help people with their problems. The sensitivity that goes into keeping information private as to who we're helping and how we're helping them, and just great people around the table making those decisions as to how we're going to help them with whatever crisis or problem or hardship that they're going through, while at the same time maintaining their dignity and their drive to succeed, so that they're not getting a handout, they're getting just some help so that they can go ahead and succeed on their own. And that was just mind-boggling to me, because until that time, Hesed for me was a one-man show. You want to do Hesed, go do Hesed. If somebody comes, everybody always does Hesed, right? From when we're young, we're doing things. We're carrying bags for people, we're opening doors for people, we're speaking nicely to people. We're doing Hesed all our lives, but when you're able to do it as part of a team that's really strategizing and coordinating and pulling resources all together to find the perfect solution, that's crazy. And that was a great time at SBH, and I enjoyed every minute of it. It took up every minute of my time, but it was just amazing, and I'm still very involved.
Nice.
Yes, that's SBH. The shul was at a time that we were doing a lot of things in the shul. A lot of people wanted to get involved, and it's a long story as to how it came about. But when the opportunity came, and when the ask came for me to actually step up and do something in a leadership role in the shul, I took it, and it was great, because that was also a great growing experience. And you end up really building a great team around you of people who not only care, but are willing to step up and fix. And I found my team both in the shul and at SBH, and in my office, really around my whole life. My teams are always the best part of everything that I do. They see everything, they do everything, they're all so capable, and it's great experience.
Amazing. Building a good team behind you, I think that's really what's important. That's what I'm getting from you.
Yeah, they choosing the right people to be associated with. Meaning that you don't choose. I mean, I always say, at very many SBH meetings, I used to say, we're not friends. Like we don't go out for dinner together. We haven't been friends before. We don't see each other in social capacity except when we go to each other's weddings. We're here because we're like-minded. We want to help people, and that's what's going to drive this friendship. And the truth is, when you get people like-minded like that, just good people looking to do good things with amazing potential, I was so impressed with each one of them. And people say, "Oh, you built a great team." That's so wrong. They really built. They built me, and they built the organization.
Right.
It's an amazing thing, and you learn to appreciate what each person can do, and that every person on my team could probably do what I'm doing better than me. The only reason they're not doing it is because they're actually doing the right work. That's the secret to it, and it's amazing.
Love it. I love that mentality, that mindset. So I guess on the note of giving back, of getting involved, you're a busy guy, you run a business. And at the same time, you were the president of SBH, you're still on the board, you're the president of your shul, you've been honored by SBH and Macaulay for your donations in terms of time and money, and like
You find everything
and so many other organizations. You can't hide anything from me. I'm, I have everything. But what I want to ask you on that note is, how do you make the time for all these things when you're running a business, as your day job? And I'm sure SBH gets involved in your day-to-day sometimes, and your business, you have to tend to it at night. I mean, how do you juggle everything?
I don't know. The timing doesn't make sense. When I look back, when I was president of SBH took up majority of my time.
Really?
Majority. My daytime. That wasn't a moonlight business for me.
Right.
That was my job. That was every day, meetings, calls, conferences, going to 425 Kings Highway, going to the new building, coming back from the new building, meeting with people who had issues, who wanted to talk. One of the realities of being in a leadership position is that people want to talk to you about things, and everybody thinks, it's only going to be 5 minutes. In reality, 5 minutes is not 5 minutes. It's 5 to 15 minutes. And when you're dealing with any organization, but especially an organization as large as SBH, you're impacting thousands and thousands, about tens of thousands of lives. And each one of them wants to have just 15 minutes of your time. And that time gets eaten up very, very quickly. I actually remember, funny story, I'm not going to say names, but there was an older, a past president of SBH that I met that was at one of the parties. And I had become the president-elect of SBH, and I saw him at the event. He didn't know who I was or anything, but I wanted to introduce myself to him. And I went up and I said, "Hi, my name's Jackie, and I just wanted to introduce myself. I know you were the president of SBH. And he just said, I'm really sorry, but I'm at a wedding, and now's not the right time." And I was like, okay. I was like, wow, what the heck was that? Okay. And I remember telling my wife, I don't know this guy. I don't want to know this guy. I was so taken aback by it. And years later, when when I was the president, I was at a wedding, and there's really I don't say a line of people, but there were people who were just circling. Everybody wanted to ask something about something that was going on, and all legitimate. But and my wife was itching she needed to go home. It was late. She was like, "Jack, let's go, stop." And I'm just 1 minute. Somebody, I'm trying to talk to somebody. Finally, somebody came. So I don't know what time it was, but it was well past the time I should have been there. And someone was like, "Jack, I just want to ask you something about SBH." I'm like, "I really don't have the time tonight. I have to go, but another time." And they said, "Okay." And she's like, "Wow, you became that guy." I'm like, "You can't blame me." This is, But it's hard. That's hard. You have a limited amount of time in the day. This is, no matter how little sleep you get, you have a limited amount of time in the day. And even if you were only going to do one thing, when you do it really well, it takes time. And when you want to share with people what you're doing, when you want to share information, when you want to keep people informed as to what's going on, that takes time. And when you want to follow up with your team, that takes time. And at some point, you end up being short. You end up getting a little bit short. Not because your mindset is that you want to be short, but because you have so many tasks to do in a day. You need to do it and move to the next and move to the next. And people who aren't in that fold, in that inner fold that really sees what's going on, you can get the wrong impression, like I did.
Right, right. And you must have been the 10th person that came up to him that night.
I would imagine so.
Right. Wow. So interesting. So I think the answer is to how do you make the time is, I don't know, and I don't always, right?
The time doesn't add up. Look, before I joined SBH, I considered myself to be one of the busiest people in the world. I had no time for anything. I was working through the night. was doing my work. Like, there was no time for a thing. The only reason I got involved in SBH was because somebody had asked me to help with a particular case that involved finance and mortgages and something that I knew something about. And I said, yeah, he doesn't have to sell his house. He could do ABC and, and I was like, they're like, could you talk to him? And I was like, I'll give him 5 minutes. That became 5 years. Somebody once said, I forgot who it was, when I was growing up. They said, you don't have time for anything except for the things that you want to make time for.
Right.
So, you could be very busy, but if there's like, a great game or a great movie or a great class or a great dinner going on somewhere, that you're going to find time for. You find time for the things that matter to you. And you just have to make a little bit of time to realize what matters. And I find that to be true. So when I was involved in SBH, I would prioritize SBH because it was making such a huge impact across such a big population, as opposed to maybe making time for something that was helping one person at a time. So that's why I would devote my time to it. And I found that I didn't suffer for that. I think my business grew during that period, if anything. And that also doesn't make sense. Not that it's supposed to make sense, but it didn't make sense. Everything seemed to run really, really well. I guess the rabbis will say things run really well when you leave God in charge.
Right. Right.
That's a good way to live.
I like that. It's so interesting to think about. Should people follow their passion?
Depends on what their passion is.
Sure.
If they're realistic and they have a passion for something, passion for photography or videography, passion for law, passion for music, if you have something that you really like and you could figure out a way to get there, and you also have to know what you need in life, right? If you're a trust fund baby and you don't need anything, then you could follow your passion in music and acting, and you could do all that, even if you don't have the greatest skills, because you could live a very nice life anyway. But if you don't have that, if you really have to succeed on your own in order to make it, then your passion has to resonate with your skills, and it has to be compatible with what society will appreciate and pay for. If your passion is to be a tech giant, then great. That's a field that today seems like it could be very, very well suited for success. But now that you have that passion, what are you doing towards it? Are you spending your days playing video games, or are you learning code? So you have to, I think following your passion in theory is great. Yes, everybody should follow their passion. Go for it. But now, what does that mean? Does that mean, just doing what you like to do, or doing what needs to be done in order to be successful at that, in that path?
That's probably the most balanced and nuanced answer I've gotten to that question, which is great. I mean, I totally agree with you. I want to ask you, looking back at your career, again, from your younger days working in the store and just going to law school and taking the LSAT for the fun of it, right, and then going to law school, and until today with your community activism and your thriving business, thank God. What has been your momentum moment? And if you had to pinpoint one moment, it doesn't have to be where your business turned around, it doesn't have to be when, it doesn't have to be a monumental time in your life, but it could be a realization that you came to that you could fit what you love into business, right? Or it could be a 5-second moment, an epiphany you had of, I can help people and be fulfilled in what I do. It could be anything, but for you, what was your momentum moment?
So I was at Cadwalader, and I was a second year, and it was in my first year. My first year at Cadwalader. I had just started, and the hiring partner walks by my office. I was on, for some reason, because the HR person liked me, she put me on the floor with all the partners. It was known as the partner floor, 7th floor of 100 Maiden. And somehow also I got this corner office. It wasn't a large partner office, but it was still a corner office, which was rare for any associate to get, let alone a first year. And the hiring partner walks by and he says, "Great job last night." I was like, okay. And now there's somebody sitting in my office and he looks at me and goes, "What was that about? Like, do you work with Paul as a litigation partner?" And I was in the capital markets division. He's like, "What did you do with Paul?" And I said, "Nothing." He's like, "So what was that about?" I'm like, "I don't know." He's like, "All right, that's weird." A couple of days later, I'm in the office again with this guy, and Paul walks by and he's like, "Great job last night." And he walks by. And the guy looks at him and goes, "You still don't know what that's about?" And I was like, "I have no idea." He's like, "I'm going to find out." He walks out, he goes to Paul's office, and they come back together laughing. So apparently Paul was a huge tennis fan, and he's watching the US Open, and he thought at the time, I was a little bit thinner then, he thought I looked like Pete Sampras. And he was like, he was congratulating me on my game. I was like, oh, okay, like I would have never made that connection ever. We became friendly.
From where to where?
From where to where. And we became friendly, and then he comes in one day and says, "Jack, I need a favor. We're looking for somebody to do on-campus interviews at Cardozo, which is the school that we hired you from. You're the only person we have here from Cardozo. And would you like to be the person that goes there to interview all of these candidates to come to the firm?" And I said, okay, like, so weird. A year ago, I was in the interview seat, and the person that came from Cadwalader was like, "Wow, like, we have to impress them. Like, who is this guy? Everybody's scared, And they want me to be that guy now to go back to the." I said, okay, I guess I could do that. So he tells me to go do it, and I asked him. I said, "What are the qualifications?" He goes, "Well, no, you're gonna be in charge of that. You just you pick from talk to the school, get a list of candidates, go meet them, and bring back whoever you think deserves a second interview. And we'll see who you want to hire." I said, "Are there any limits, any rules, how many people?" He goes, "Whatever you think." He said at the time, he goes, "Just bring back people like you," which he was being nice. I never worked for him. He didn't know what I did. He didn't know my work product or anything. He just said it to be nice. So I go to the school and I say, I go to the dean. I was very friendly with the dean at the time. And I said, "Do me a favor. People who are very, very strong, right? They're still in the top 20% of their class, but they're not getting the interviews that they need to get at big law. I want to meet a lot of them." And I remember the dean was like, "Don't get me in trouble with Cadwalader. Like, we want to get people in, So I was like, I just want to see. I look at their resumes and I say, I'd like to meet a lot of these people. And sure enough, I go in for on-campus interview and I meet them. And you know what? I find that they are great people, just great people, great to interview, great to talk to, regular people, not stuck up, not proud about, I'm top 10% law review, I'm this and that. I just, I really want to work, and I'm very appreciative that I got an interview at Big Law, because everybody said that I wouldn't get that if I wasn't top 10% law review. And I found, like myself, the same way they told me to look for somebody like myself, that these people, I figured that these people would work harder at the position than somebody who thought they were entitled to it.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I ended up bringing a lot of them back for second interviews, and sure enough, a lot of them got offers. And I remember a partner comes back to me and he says, Jack. What did you do? Like, we had one token guy who was in Harvard, Yale. And I bring back like a whole crew from Cardozo. Like, what are you doing? But in reality, those people were the hardest workers. They did great, super qualified, and they were a great asset to the firm. And a lot of them I still work with today. And you asked me what was my momentum moment. I'll tell you that realization, that was an opportunity that, like, why was I in that position? And I always think back, and I'll give my religious thing, with Mordechai and Esther, right? When they tell Esther to go, in front of the king, and she says, well, what if what if he'll kill me, right? It says, well, maybe this is the reason, right, that you got into this position. And I keep that with me. That's always in my back pocket. Whenever opportunities like that come, where you can help somebody or you can do something for someone, especially when it's out of your comfort zone, especially when there's a risk to you that, like, what if I screw up? What if I bring back people and they're not good? Like, why would I vouch for anybody, right? I'm barely there myself. But I always think about that, maybe it's for this precise moment that I got into that position. So I lean on that a lot in my decisions in life. And anytime there is an opportunity to help, I do my best to do that. That's it.
What a mindset. Wow.
It was that realization that, because you know what, I guess if I put it all together, I always felt like I didn't fit in. But when that opportunity comes to help, that's when I realized why I fit in. That was the reason. That was the reason. I have to fulfill my job in that role.
Love it. I love it. And just like how, to reflect back on this entire conversation, amazing. And I could tell from you that, you really used your experiences to help people. And all the way back from when your father's friend called you, he only spoke Arabic, and asked you to help buy a house, right? And you were reluctant at first, but that turned into your business, and that laid the foundation for your presidency at SBH, and you're helping thousands of people throughout your tenure there, and until today. And you were a captain as well. I could just see that you apply your experiences in life to helping other people. It's amazing, and it's very admirable, and I think that it's something that all people young and old should really take inspiration of. And Jack, I thank you for coming.
Thank you.
This is great. I learned a lot, and I'm sure others will as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, awesome. Wow, that was great. Thank you so much, guys, for listening until the end. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Here are my top 3 takeaways from my conversation with Jack. First, small moments can change your entire life. Jack's law firm started with one phone call from a family friend who didn't speak English, and that single moment turned into a law firm, a platform for leadership, and a decades-long impact for our community. Second, you'll never have the time, but you have to make the time. This is something that Joey Jerome echoed in his episode. We're all busy. We all get caught up in life, and we have things to do, but if something is important to you, you'll carve out the time for it. And third, acquire skills no matter what they are. Jack's all about continually learning and acquiring new skills. Now, I'm not saying you have to be like Jack and take that to the next level by going to law school just to have another skill under your belt, although it definitely worked out for him. But what I am saying is that we should all develop the mentality to be continually improving, whether it be keeping up with new technologies, immersing yourself in different industries aside from the one that you're in, or even meeting new people. A growth mindset is crucial in business. Guys, if you enjoyed this episode, check out my conversation with Erwin Dweck. Now, like Jack, Erwin is also a lawyer, but he took a totally different path. Erwin actually stayed in big law and is now a partner at Milbank, a huge firm with thousands of employees and over $2 billion in revenue. It was an eye-opening conversation for me personally, especially to look at how Erwin did not grow up with money. But after putting in the time, he made a name for himself. Check that out on any platform by searching Momentum Erwin Dweck or by clicking the link in the show notes. And with that said, everybody, thank you again so much for watching. This is the first episode of season 2, and we have great things coming. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, or if you didn't, drop a comment below. Give me your feedback. Anything that you think I can improve on. Guys, I'm always asking for feedback, and it's really because that's how I improve. You're the viewer, and I make this podcast for you. So thank you in advance for your feedback. That's how I improve. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.